One of the major highlights of this year's German Film Festival in Australia is a documentary called Riefenstahl. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of that film, Riefenstahl, Andres Veiel. Andres, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here. Yeah.
Great to talk to you. And this is such an intriguing documentary about Leni Riefenstahl. What motivated you to make this film about her?
Well, first of all, it was the access to her estate. Her estate is quite big. It's in 700 boxes spread over to three museums in Berlin: the Museum of Photography, the Museum of Films, the Cinematheque, and also the State Library, where all the written documents are handed over. So, of course, it was a challenge because of the huge amount of footage, but it was also, in a good sense, a challenge because I became curious. I was very curious to see what's in this estate. Do we get another framing for the story of Leni Riefenstahl with all her lies and legends? And she's quite famous for being a manipulator of her own biography, uh, just denying all responsibilities for the atrocities of the Third Reich. Even she was a propagandist for this Third Reich, especially for Hitler.
Absolutely. Now, what intrigued me about your film is that you try not to pass judgment as such, but to put the material together in such a way that the audience makes up its own mind. But the way it's edited, I think it really shows what she was like.
Yeah, for us, it was very, very important not just to stage a new tribunal, but to find something like an approach which is much more ambivalent, to show how she became what she was in the very end. And for me, she's something like a prototype of a fascist. But I don't like if I get educated in a film. I like it when I can discover something and find something like my own approach, my own opinion towards a protagonist. So for me, the interesting approach was to see or to find her own contradictions, to see she was the one who changed the storytelling at a specific moment of her biography. And the interesting question is why and when did she change a storytelling? Or on the other hand, why she was stuck in an ideology of the Third Reich even after the war. This was really something which surprised me a lot because I thought after the war she should have maybe got at least some distance and saying something like, okay, in the Third Reich, I was seduced. I got all the money, all the opportunities a filmmaker is dreaming of. But so I followed the seduction and I made these films. But today I think in another way about it. But uh, far of it, nothing in this direction. And so the question was why she's petrified in a way.
Yep, just frozen there for a moment.
But
Uh,
at least in what she did.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, her denial of knowing that anything was going on about concentration camps, about murders of Jews, all that sort of thing. And she kept that denial going for so long to the point that she would walk out of interviews if there was any question about her not knowing what was going on. I found that quite incredible.
Yeah, actually, she was at the same time she was very she had an intuition or intelligence of intuition. Um, she knew, okay, at least if I get an interview, and she gave hundreds of interviews, the currency is attention. And even she walks out of an interview, she comes back after a while. Why? She knew, okay, I want to sell my Nuba books. She was in Africa and she took a lot, 200,000 pictures in the very end, and of the Nuba tribe in Sudan. And she knew she wanted to sell these coffee table books. So you're right, she walked out of the interviews, but she came back because then always she walked out when she was asked about, did you have a love affair with Hitler? Was he a good sexual partner, etc., etc. So she walked out, but then she continued because this was the currency. She knew, okay, uh, the journalists, they show up because of her past, not only because of the beautiful pictures of the Nuba. So always the third question or the 10th question was, so tell us about how did you meet Hitler? And always she got upset. And then she started to answer for hours. And in always the same stories, of course. That was, in a way, it makes me tired. It's like a sermon, always the same story. No, I was an artist. I was not never interested in politics. I met Hitler, but he forced me to shoot Triumph of the Will. And I said, okay, this time I follow him to make afterwards my own films. These are all her legends. She was an enthusiastic National Socialist, to put it in one sentence.
Absolutely. I saw that through all of the documentation and everything you reveal. I mean, her image is so important to her. I mean, starting as an actress with Arnold Fanck films, and then later on when she was being interviewed, she had to look right, she had to look good. Her image was so important to her, and you bring that out so strongly in Riefenstahl.
Yeah, to control her image. That was the most important point. You see it in the very beginning. Today, she would be an Instagram girl. Everything was controlled, which picture should be published and in which pose. And she gave home stories all already in the 1920s until the very last moment, one of the last scenes in the film. She has a problem with a wrinkle. So she tells the crew, so change the light. I don't like the light. And she was insisting just because of a wrinkle. And she wanted to control everything. And in a way, it's tragic because she couldn't accept her age. She could just be proud. I'm 100 years old, and that's terrific. And of course, I have wrinkles, and that's fine. No, she had to fight against the decay. And that's also very current. Death is a sickness. We have to fight him.
Yeah, how interesting to hear that. Now, I must say you have found some fantastic footage, never before seen footage, and other interviews and offcuts of interviews and so on. I was so impressed by that. So the actual editing process, the order, the sequence where you put everything, must have taken you a long time to get right.
Yeah, absolutely. The preparation just to digitalize, I'd say something like one third of the estate took 2 years. And then we went with the editing crew. I had three editors plus assistant. So it was somehow a luxury production to work with three editors, great editors in three editing rooms. And I just was jumping from one editing room to the other, and then were discussing the whole process. And it took 18 months because of the huge amount of findings in the estate. And the problem or the challenge was, for example, after a year of editing, we found this letter of the adjutant regarding the Konski episode where she was a war photographer. And she was an eyewitness of the first massacre of Jews in Poland in September 1939. And this letter was in the estate. It was very interesting because I think, okay, of course, I would have removed it. It charges her being even a catalyst of the massacre. Not she didn't attend the massacre. She didn't want the Jews to be killed, but she gave a stage direction. And after the stage direction, the Jews panicked, and she just said, "Jews out of the image, so the Jews out of the frame, get off." And this was shouted, and then there was a panic, and then there was the Jews were shot. And so that was for me something which shifted my own perspective towards her regarding maybe she was much more guilty, much more involved regarding her responsibility. And so we had to reconstruct, in a way, the whole film because we had such a strong magnet suddenly. And so this was the interesting process of editing. Always surprises, always new structure, always, of course, debates also with the producer. How long does it take? And you should be finished, and etc., etc.
How interesting to hear that. What Riefenstahl also sets up is the idea of the artistic achievement, how important that is, versus the personal situation of the filmmaker, and that context is such an interesting one. I mean, Triumph of the Will and Olympia are such beautifully constructed films, and yet can you separate that out from the filmmaker and their personal situation?
Yeah, I don't, when you ask me, I don't want to separate aesthetics and ideology. What some filmmakers, some colleagues, even famous colleagues do, when Tarantino, for example, considers her one of the most important filmmakers ever. And so I think you can separate it, especially when you look at Riefenstahl, because she made propaganda for a regime which was in the very end not only responsible for the death of 6 million Jews, but also the death of gypsies, of Roma Sinti, of homosexuals, communists, and later on, when you see the amount of deaths in the Second World War, 60 million dead people, and this responsibility making propaganda for a regime which was responsible for all these atrocities. You can't detach it and say, "Oh, it's art." Even in Olympia, I just counted how often Hitler shows up in the first part, it's 26 times.
Hmm.
So the main hero is not Jesse Owens. The main hero is Adolf Hitler.
Yes, exactly right. Look, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but two quick questions, Andres. First of all, you've made so many interesting films, Black Box, BRD, so many others. How do you decide what films you make?
Um, First of all, there must be, I call it the inner necessity. I always had the luxury that I wanted to make the films I have to make. So I never just said, somebody asked me, "Oh, it's you get a lot of money," and I go ahead. No, I know it's somehow like a tunnel, a working tunnel of. In the beginning, you think I can do the film and make the film in 2 years, but then in the end, it's mostly 3 to 4 years. So it's really it's lifetime, and it's a precious lifetime. So I needed very strong inner motivation to do it. And so I wait. Sometimes also regarding Riefenstahl, I say, let's look what is in the archive, in her archives, in her estate. is it really necessary to make a new film? Because there are already 2 or 3 films on her, even good ones. And does the estate makes it necessary? Is there a need to make a third or a fourth film? And so I have to feel this strong current in a way towards a new project. And then I say yes, and then I do it with a full commitment. And with Riefenstahl, it was a challenge because it was really a demanding protagonist. She is not reflective. She, in a way, she doesn't inspire you.
Mm.
But even that was balanced in a way because her her aesthetics, and even the ideology is so current. To simplify complex issues in politics, to use scapegoating as a tool in politics. All these issues show me how, in a way, threatening the topicality of her ideology is till today, or especially today, maybe even more. It's a warning out of the future. And so I said, okay, it's daring. It's challenging, but we have to do the film with a lot of. It was a roller coaster drive, as always. You doubt it. You don't find the right structure for it. You miss a lot. There's a lot of disappointment, but there are many rewards on the way in the very end. And especially now, I'm in Australia, and it's a harvesting time. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, excellent to hear that. All right, just to finish up very quickly, are you working, Andres, on another film at the moment?
Yeah, a lot. I've actually 3 projects, and that's too much. And I'm just you're asking me about my necessities, and it takes a lot of preparation, and then I will make a decision which one of the 3 projects will be realized at first. And maybe I don't know how many films in my life I can still do. I hope it will be 3 or 4. It takes so long, maybe 5, and I'm very lucky. So it needs to be very precise in this decision making. Which film is really the one that has to be done
Yes,
without any doubts?
I understand perfectly. Andres Veiel, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Riefenstahl is such an incredible film as part of the German Film Festival in Australia. And thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you too. This is a podcast, or where do you publish the interview?
Yes, it'll be on YouTube,
Yeah.
on my Movie Metropolis channel, and
Yeah.
yes, it's a podcast, and also from
Yeah.
on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I see. And did you before you were or are a film critic for newspapers, or just I'm curious to know what is your
I'm a
biography?
Of course, I'm a film critic on 2 radio stations each week, and I also do some film reviews on a third radio station. And I'm a member of Fapresky. I've been on 3 Fapresky juries, including the Munich
I see.
Film
Yeah,
Festival. Yeah.
I see. And you're still a jury member at film festivals. You're still traveling.
Not so much anymore because of the cost and health
Yeah,
issues and so on. But
yeah.
uh,
But you are based in Melbourne, or where are you based?
yes,
Yeah,
based in Melbourne. That's correct. Das
yeah,
ist richtig.
yeah. Yeah, and you got a film link, or you could watch it last night? No, you got a link for the interview,
I
the
did
film
get a
link.
link. Yes, yes,
Yeah. Okay.
and it was fascinating. It was such a fascinating film. So well done on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so
Okay,
much. Yeah.
Dankeschön.
Ja. Danke
Okay,
auch. Ja.
okay.
Tschüss.
Auf
All the
Wiedersehen.
best.
Tschüss.
Ja.
Okay. Bye bye.
Ja. Tschüss.
Tschüss.